Angel, Alex Jones. I know you're a fan of Alex Jones. Okay? He's one of our hero. Huh, Angel? Okay? With Tucker Carlson. Okay? So we're gonna watch it. Okay? Your hero. Okay, watch it.
United States defined by its hatreds, not its loves, not its hopes, but by its hatreds. They hate all kinds of people, large groups of people, the deplorables, the bitter clingers, America's entire blue-collar population, the unfashionable people. They're hated by the people who run our country. But no one is hated more by them than a man called Alex Jones. Alex Jones is the single most censored man in all American history. He was the first media figure in our history to be completely erased in one day, deplatformed. Alex Jones was deplatformed before it was a common term. And not just deplatformed, sued, attacked. They attempted to criminally charge him. What did Alex Jones do wrong? Alex Jones didn't rape anybody. He didn't loot Macy's. He didn't burn a police station. He didn't invent a fake cryptocurrency and loot pension funds. He didn't start a pointless war that made this country poorer and more disorganized. He didn't open the southern border. No, Alex Jones had opinions that deeply rattled the people who run America. In fact, rattled a lot of us. And I'll just confess that I first heard of Alex Jones when he questioned the official story behind 9/11. And I, speaking for myself, was deeply offended by this. I didn't take any time to find out what he was saying, but I was bothered by the idea that this defining event in American history, which changed the life of everyone who lived here then, might not actually have unfolded as we were told it did. And that possibility was too destabilizing. And I remember feeling resentment toward Alex Jones for saying that. But several years later, I wound up in Austin, Texas, and through a chain of circumstances, wound up meeting Alex Jones. And I learned what everyone who has met him now knows, which is Alex Jones is not a crazy person. Alex Jones has said pretty far out things on TV from time to time. Not that far out. He hasn't said men can become women or Ukraine is a democracy, but within the bounds of, say, cable news, pretty far out. But fundamentally, Alex Jones is right about a lot of things. And in fact, that's why they don't like him. Alex Jones has an uncanny, really an amazing ability to predict events before they happen. He has called it, and he's done it on tape again and again, to the point where it's a meme on the internet. Alex Jones, prophet. Not conspiracy nut, prophet. But when you dig into Alex Jones's predictions, they are so spot on that it's remarkable. How does he do this? We're guessing there's a kind of spiritual sensitivity to Alex Jones. Maybe that's his secret. He was displaying this years before the average person in this country even thought about matters like that. Now it's pretty obvious to most people that the current war going on in this country is taking place in ways you can't see it most of the time. But 10 years ago, people were not thinking that way. Alex Jones was. And so we thought it'd be interesting to sit down and talk to Alex Jones, the man. He joins us now in our studio. Alex Jones, thank you.
Wow, Tucker, it's great to be here. Amazing studios, amazing people. And this is really going to be, I think, a historic interview. So thanks for having me.
Well, I'm really grateful to be able to do it. And it's one of the great blessings of my life and of my job is that I've been able to meet people that I've had preconceptions about and sometimes find those preconceptions bolstered and in other cases demolished. And you're definitely in the second category. So I want, for people who've made it this far, the people who run the country have really succeeded in making you disreputable. And the whole point, of course, is people won't listen to you. So we thought it'd be interesting to start with a series of on-tape predictions that you made, some of which are so precise and so prescient that it makes the hair on my arms stand up. And I'm being sincere, and our viewers are about to see what I'm talking about. Here is a list of things that you called ahead of time. But those 9/11 clips are crazy. I'm actually bothered by the precision of them. I'm not accusing you of being behind 9/11. But how could you, in July of 2001, call that? You said they're going to have airliners fly into the World Trade Center and they're going to blame a guy called Osama bin Laden. Now, leaving aside what actually happened, how could you have known that?
Well, in the longer clips, it's a multi-hour show from July 25th, 2001. I specifically walked through all the reasons, and I knew they were hyping up that we were about to be hit by Osama bin Laden. I knew that the World Trade Center had been attacked the first time and that the Fed's been involved helping cook the bomb and allowing it to go forward. And I just saw a lot of the pre-programming that was happening in the media, because they were on the news saying, life's about to change in America. And I was reading what the RAND Corporation was saying and what the Pentagon was putting out. And I read the PNAC document from a year before, Rebuilding America's Defenses, that Dick Cheney had helped write. And it said we need a Pearl Harbor event on the American homeland to be able to bring in this police state and this control and then expand the American empire worldwide. So hundreds of pieces of data went into that prediction.
But terrorists are going to hit the World Trade Center in July of 2001. I lived in the United States then. That was the last thing on my mind. And I lived in Washington. I know the guys who wrote the PNAC document because I shared an office with them. So I was more informed than the average person. And that was the last thing that crossed my mind in the summer of 2001. Like everyone else, I thought it was a Cessna. But how convinced were you that this was going to happen?
I was completely convinced. In fact, in the full clip that's online, you can find it on Twitter and other places, it has been removed. I explained to people that they need to call the White House and tell the White House, we know if you allow these attacks that you're basically allowing it to happen. And it was similar to all the data we had when
Well, you said that on your show?
On my show. And I gave the number out so people could actually call the White House. And then going back to October of last year, when the Russians went into Ukraine, I specifically said I think they'll go in by the end of February. And there was a lot of data that went into that. And then they specifically did go in on February 24th. And so I was able to make that prediction as well. But there was a lot of data and information that went into it.
Sure. I'm just, for the record, I miscalled that completely. I didn't think they were going to do it. You were right. I was wrong, not for the first time. But the 9/11 thing, I remember that really well. Nobody was thinking like that. So you called it in public on tape. Did the 9/11 Commission, so if I'm the FBI and I'm investigating 9/11, you're like the first guy I would call because you're the only person who said that out loud. Did they call you?
No, they didn't. But my most accurate prediction, going back over a decade, was when I read the Rockefeller Foundation Operation Lockstep, and they described using a virus to bring in world government, to bring in a world medical ID, that they would then build a social credit score off of, and that they would make people wear masks for fear, that they would shut down sporting events and things like that, and basically phase in this new tyranny. So I was also able to specifically make that prediction over and over and over again because I was going off their own battle plans.
Are you the only person in media who actually reads these reports?
I don't think a lot of people do read them, but I do read them. I mean, I'm currently reading MIT reports from their top councils, Pentagon reports. They have a working group called the Mad Scientist Group at the Pentagon that works with MIT. And if you go watch their hour-long, 2-hour-long, 3-hour-long meetings they have on YouTube with all the tops, I mean, we're talking hundreds of top scientists, they admit that they're building a post-human world, that soon everyone's going to be mind-controlled, that they're going to put smart dust in our food that they can electromagnetically control, and they just lay it all out right there. And I've learned what these people said in the 50s they would do were done by the 70s. What they said their plan was in the 70s for the 90s, they got done. And then when they had their Agenda 21 in Rio de Janeiro in 1992, the big UN summit, they described everything they would do up until the year 2000, and they got almost all of that done. Now they've got Agenda 2030, and we're going to ban your gas stoves, we're going to ban beef, we're going to ban single-family dwellings, we're going to ban private ownership of cars, and we're going to do all this, and now you see them rolling it all out. So I'm not really making predictions in these high-level World Economic Forum and other large think tank groups. They are laying out the future, and their high priest of the World Economic Forum, that's a consortium of all these groups, Yuval Noah Harari, you can read his quotes. The future's not human. The human era is over. The public is useless. I mean, this is a very anti-human system, so that's how I'm able to make predictions, because they've given us a roadmap. They tell us where they want to take us. And so when the public wakes up, we push back on some of it, but they always come back. And so I'm just following the trajectory of where they say they want to take us. And there were a lot of white papers, not just the PNAC document from 2000, a year before 9/11, where they described we really need big terror attacks, we really need Pearl Harbor events to get Americans to give up their rights. I mean, take what just happened in Israel, totally tragic. My heart goes out to all the been killed or lost loved ones or been injured. But there's no way that one of the best intelligence agencies in the world didn't know that was coming. The massive buildup, the 5,000 missiles, the paragliding attacks, all of that. And so there was clearly a stand down there. And now the West will take more of the people's rights. Israel will be able to crack down and take more of their people's rights, which is a big debate over there. Hamas is being funded by Hezbollah, which is Iran. We just had Biden a month ago give $6 billion to Iran. And now the mullahs are bragging that they were behind the attack, Hezbollah funding Hamas. So really, those aren't even predictions. It's clear that Hezbollah and Hamas have tens of thousands of men and women as sleeper cells that are, quote, other than Mexican, that the Border Patrol lists every month, tens of thousands coming across the Texas and Arizona and California sectors. And it's an easy equation to predict that there's a wide probability that Hezbollah and Hamas at some point are going to attack sports stadiums, they're going to attack colleges, they're going to attack synagogues, they're going to shoot up mass gatherings if they're given the order by Iran, if we go to war with Iran. And then when this happens, our government won't get in trouble for dissolving the border and letting these people come in. Just like on 9/11, our government clearly had prior knowledge. There was clearly a major stand down that went on, and the government got more power, more control, and now they're not pointing the Homeland Security apparatus at the Russians like they did in the Cold War, or the Islamists after 9/11. Now they admit that their main focus is Christian conservatives and the bitter clingers and the people that live in rural America, that quote, white people, I mean, it says that in the report, are the main terror threat. And so this whole apparatus of the war on terror, it has now been turned inwardly against the people, not just here, but also in Europe, where if someone criticizes transgenderism in the UK, they come to their house and arrest them. If a journalist does that, they come to their house and arrest them. If somebody says, I think these surveillance cameras should start getting cut down, they come to their house and they arrest them for their free speech. And so this is a global movement by the mega corporations, by the BlackRocks and the State Streets and the Vanguards that control 80+% of world wealth to control our behavior. And Larry Fink of BlackRock has said that at the Davos Group repeatedly. We're going to use our control over all this finance and this global social credit score we're rolling out to control people's behavior. So that's really what this is. And then they use the threat of global warming, they use the threat of a virus, they use the threat of radical Islam to take our rights, but we really are the target.
Even if by the way, none of that seems implausible at this point. I mean, just you're a measure of how the world has changed. If you'd said this to me 15 years ago, I'd have been like, someone's a crackpot and it's not me. And now after COVID, nothing you said seems crazy at all. I mean, you may be right, you may be wrong, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, obviously. But even if I disagree with what you just said, I would think that's pretty interesting. It's an interesting perspective. Why do you think, you've committed no crime, you'd be in jail if you had. Why do you think they hate you so much?
Because I do read their documents and I do read their books, and we were effectively getting a lot of people in the military and the intelligence agencies who were compartmentalized and who tuned into my show and saw my films and read my books and things, and they clicked with it and said, wow, I see all this going on around me. He's not lying about it. And then I would give them other pieces that I discovered or my other guests discovered. And so it was giving them an operational awareness outside of their compartmentalization. And so we had massive success in the military, in the police, and in the intelligence agencies, not just here, but around the world. And so our penetration into those areas to help people expand their awareness that we're inside the government, inside corporations, was triggering a lot of whistleblowers, was triggering a lot of people not going along with the program. And so really my sin was decompartmentalization of the population.
When you got deplatformed, and to this day, no one has ever been more aggressively censored, I don't think, than you. I've apologized to you this in person before. I was in Labrador on a fishing trip and missed the entire thing. I was literally out of cell range. I didn't know what happened, but I got back and I read about it. I felt like it was a major moment in the history of the American media. I don't think anybody defended you when that happened. Anybody. with any kind of audience.
For me, when Tim Cook admitted that he met on the weekend in August of 2017 with the other big tech heads, and they made the decision to curate, like it's a museum, and take me off. It was hundreds of platforms. I mean, it wasn't just all the big ones. It was everything from LinkedIn to our bank accounts being taken away to everything ensuing that week and over the next month. And I knew that I was a test case, and I wasn't taken off those platforms for any demonstrable reason. It was the questioning the school shooting thing that came later. They went and kind of dredged that up from my past, just questioning it a few times, blew that up after I'd been deplatformed, and said I was deplatformed for that. But if you check the record, I wasn't. And so once they deplatformed me, it made the show in ways only get bigger, with people actually going to Infowars.com and finding me on local radio stations and things. So then they panicked and said, okay, let's look at his record and create more of a reason that he's being taken off. So they took things out of context from 5-6 years before, blew them up as a current thing out of context, and deceptively reported on what I'd said to create a straw man argument to then facilitate the reason.
What's so crazy is if you asked just a cross-section of Americans who's responsible for the Sandy Hook massacre of kids at the school, no one remembers the name of the murderer.
Adam Lanza.
Okay, thank you. I didn't remember. Alex Jones. They effectively blamed you for a school shooting that you were not present at.
I have people come up to me in the parking lot. You can ask my security guy. He's been there when people walk up and go, "Why'd you kill those kids?" And then you go, "I didn't kill those kids." And they go, "Yeah, you did." And so that is what this has turned into. And this is bigger than me. I want people to understand something, that the mullahs in Iran and the Ayatollah are congratulating Hamas that just killed around 1,000 or more innocent Israelis, many of them women, children, disabled people, in a vicious, evil sneak attack. They are on there. Hezbollah and Hamas, mainly Hamas, but it's Hezbollah funding it out of Iran, are literally posting videos of them cutting people's heads off and killing children and massacring innocent people. They're allowed to have their Hezbollah accounts and their Hamas accounts. The Ayatollah is able to congratulate what these people done, and I am still banned. And I'm not mad at Elon Musk. I understand I've been so demonized with the general public. He's barely able to keep Twitter going right now. I really appreciate what he's done. I admire him. I think he's done a lot of great work, and I see him moving in the right direction. So a lot of people attack Musk on Twitter. I trend all the time. Hey, if you're such an absolutist on free speech, bring back Alex Jones. I understand that if he did that, the ADL and others would really be able to probably shut down Twitter. So I understand that he needs to go through a process before he does that. So people get mad at Twitter for not.
Why the ADL? I'm not the world's expert on your career, but I know you. I've never heard you say a single anti-Semitic thing and an anti-Israel thing. Why would the ADL be against you? I don't think anyone's even called you an anti-Semite.
Well,
unless I'm missing something.
I mean, what goes on is the left forever called everybody a racist if you were just a conservative or pro-Second Amendment or pro-life or thought we ought to have a border. And that didn't work anymore to call people racist. And so the ADL gets all this big liberal donations. And so they go out and then police and take people's sponsors and target them just by the ADL calling up sponsors. Sponsors get scared and drop. And so that's what they've done to Elon Musk. They've been, they took over 50% of Twitter's North American and European advertising in just the last year, and bragged about it by saying he gives harbor to white supremacists, which he doesn't. But at the same time, white supremacists are ridiculous. They're goofy. Most of them are usually working for foundations and are basically actors. We're not supposed to say that, but there's many cases of that actually being the case, and that they're just LARPing that they're white supremacists. But let those clowns speak. Whatever happened to the ACLU that used to support the KKK marching through a town or publishing their own newspaper? I don't support the KKK. I think they're a joke. But if you take their rights, you take everybody's. But they're not even taking the rights of those people to post because they create fear and they get the ADL more funding. But if they can target an Alex Jones or an Elon Musk or a Tucker Carlson, then they're going after the real populist leaders that are bringing America together. And so what the left wants is to divide us all according to race, and to come out and say fundamentally with critical race theory that inherently being white is bad, and teaching 5-year-old white children they're inherently bad because they're white. That is wounding their brains and really creating racial division.
Why do people put up with that? I don't understand why. I mean, that's just, if you had told me 20 years ago, and I grew up in a world where judging people on the basis of their skin color was totally immoral, and I still believe that. But if you told me 20 years ago we were going to live in a world where people get on TV and just be like, I hate white people, they're bad, no, it's probably fine. Like, why do people put up with that? Like, there should be zero tolerance for that. I don't get it.
The Democratic Party founded the KKK. And when the majority were whites in the South in some areas, they played the race card for political power. Now that the majority in most areas are not white, they're playing the good old-fashioned race card of tell whites, stand down, let people take over your society, your culture, give up your culture. It's embarrassing to be white. And then now it's flat out bad to be white, and the left's trying to convert all these minority groups that are now majority in most areas into race-based systems, because that is a very effective system.
But why do people put up with that? I mean, like, if they were doing that to Malaysians or Filipinos or Hondurans, I would say you can't do that. You're not allowed to attack people on the basis of their race. I'm sorry, not in a country like this, because the country will fall apart, and it's immoral.
I totally agree.
But nobody says anything. I don't get it.
The reason they've done it is most of the enforcers of this are white liberal women, 45 or older, not
Fair.
It's just a fact, and they're cucked husbands. And so to them,
Can I just say that the phrase cucked husbands is the best?
it really is true. So if you get around these white liberals, they live in the whitest areas. They're totally scared of anybody with brown skin, but they virtue signal constantly and then say, yes, the white people are bad. The white people are evil. And I mean, you see white people sit there and say, yeah, it's time to deal with these crackers. And they're a white person saying that. So
From Jackson Hole or Nantucket or Aspen or Bethesda, the whitest places in America. So shouldn't there be a law? Super simple. If you've got a BLM sign in your yard, you should be required to live in Gary, Indiana or Baltimore. Like, you should not be anywhere near Jackson, Wyoming.
you should be made to live in East St. Louis.
I totally agree.
You should be made to live in Detroit.
Yes.
But of course, they've done the studies, they looked at statistics. It's not just here, it's in Europe and it's in the UK, like in London. The liberal areas are like 99% white.
Oh, I noticed.
Okay, and there's a lot of rich people in London that aren't white, but they're not even in that area. They are the most insular group, and then they point at white Christian culture and society that actually outlawed slavery in most of the world, was the vanguard of stopping it, and then they don't point at China, which is the most homogeneous racist group in the world.
It's an ethno-state. It's Han Chinese, period.
Well, they teach us, on their news, that we are going to have Chinese superiority. We are the Chinese supremacists. Xi Jinping admires Hitler. He is literally following a race-based operation that is taking the world over, that owns the majority of Hollywood, that's paid off the Democratic Party. And if you look at all these anti-white shows that you see funded in Hollywood, almost all of it has majority literal communist Chinese government backing that is funding this. So it's real simple. China looks in and sees this diverse culture, and they say, we're going to use that to split the country up and balkanize it. And that's what they've done. And so communist China, along with the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ADL and all these groups, see America's weakness, and they're literally coming in saying white people are inherently bad because of the color of their skin. They inherently have cheated people. They've hurt people. White people invented racism. None of that's true. It's really just tribalism. And then they organize all these other groups into race-based groups to then unify them under the Democratic Party to attack who is left that tends to be more conservative, and that is some white people in this country. Though they're panicking because more and more blacks are voting Republican, more and more Hispanics are voting Republican, they're starting to figure this out. So now they're in panic mode to bring in totally disenfranchised third world populations who are refugees from the multi-year lockdowns in Africa, Latin America, and Asia and the Middle East. They then bring them to UN camps, brainwash them, then bring them to our border, brainwash them more, then send them into the United States, and then literally hold them for years at facilities while they're indoctrinated to be this new political underclass that's then going to be turned loose on America. And that's why you see Democrats giving illegal aliens the right to vote in their cities, giving them driver's license. That's why you see them passing laws. They can be police officers. So they are importing a new enforcement class against the American people, and they're setting it up along racial lines, not us. They're making it racial, just like Hitler made what he did racial. So it's the left and the think tanks and the communist Chinese that look at the U.S. and have seen our weakness as race, and they are exacerbating.
So I don't understand. So you're from Texas. You grew up in Texas. Your family's been there a long time. Texas is changing really fast. It's dirty, for one thing, I noticed, because physically dirty, garbage on the side of the road. I never have seen that in Texas before. So your governor could have stopped that. He commands the Texas National Guard, and he didn't. And I feel like that makes him a traitor to the country, but what am I missing?
Well, I mean, Governor Abbott is, on a scale of 1 to 10, the best kind of Republican governor is a 10, and the worst is, say, a 1. And like the Illinois, it's a so-called Republican, that's really a Democrat. I would put Greg Abbott as about a 5. The state is overwhelmed. There isn't really a state mechanism. It's federal to kick people back and deport them. So they have put up barbed wire. They have tried to stop people. They have tried, but then they have to hand them over to the feds who release them.
Well, why not just say the feds are committing a crime? They're committing a crime. This is not allowed under laws passed by the Congress. In a democracy, the Congress passed laws. And so you've got criminals running the country. The Biden administration is criminal, which is true. And we're not playing along. And like, if you don't like it, come do something about it. Meanwhile, every able-bodied man with a black rifle assemble at the border, and we're just going to stop this and save the country. I don't understand. Like, that's not hard. What am I missing?
No, I think you're absolutely right. In fact, what the deep state fears would be a coalition of good governors, good attorney generals, giving them the findings and the rulings that they could indeed do that, and then declaring emergencies in the states and having a coalition of the states come in and do this, and then instruct local police and everybody else to not have sanctuary cities. But the problem is, if you're in Texas, every single city, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, are Democrat Party run. And so Texas is almost purple because the California influx and all the other refugees from New York, many of them bring their leftist ideology with them, even though they're fleeing it. Like locusts, they fly to the next field. And so that's really the issue, is that the legislature is somewhat cucked, to use that word again, and I think the governor has been cucked. He certainly went along with lockdowns and masks more than really any other Republican governor. And so I do think Greg Abbott needs to do a better job, but I also wanted to list some of the things that the state is up against. But I'll say this. Austin fired a bunch of police and another third quit. Crime everywhere, homeless everywhere, trash everywhere, ruin the city like everywhere else they are.
You live there.
Absolutely. That's where my family's from. I've been there since high school. But I'm going to have to leave soon because it's gotten more and more like Los Angeles every day. It's very sad to see it. People fleeing LA, like my friend Joe Rogan, it seems great to him because he went from a really, really bad situation to a bad situation. But if you've been there, you can see the decline. You can see how fast it is. And it's really, 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 really sad. And there are just illegal aliens everywhere and refugees from the rest of the country all over the place. And you see really the economic decline of most of the mom and pop businesses and things. So the same rot we've seen all over the country. Austin was supposedly this big mecca and it was going to be so great. And now sadly it's falling apart. I mean, Tucker, you know the answer to all this. You do the best job of anybody with a true Americana populist breakdown. The ruling elites of the world, the Black Rocks, the State Streets, they're on record saying they don't want our consumer society. They don't want our capitalist society. It's bad, it's ugly, it's gross. But they're the biggest consumers compared to anybody else in the world. Their quote, carbon footprints are thousands of times bigger than the average person. Leonardo DiCaprio or Klaus Schwab literally have carbon footprints thousands of times bigger than the average poor working American, that they're telling you can't have a car or air conditioning. Remember, before Obama left office, he traveled to Latin America, to Africa, and the Middle East. And what did he tell them in speeches? The clips are famous. You can't have a car or air conditioning. The earth will overheat and burn up. While he's telling people that by the year 2017, like Al Gore said, we would have areas flooded on the coastal areas while he bought a big house in Martha's Vineyard at 1 foot above sea level. And of course, it's still there and it hasn't flooded. I mean, his chef died there. He drowned, sadly, but no flooding inside the house, just the dead chef. So they're waging war against civilization and society to make us poor, to put us under siege, and to